Hey guys, Upstander, and today we're going to do a Slayer vlog. Haven't done one of these in probably years, but I think it's long overdue. So one thing I'm going to try to do for this video is to speak a little differently than I probably normally do, and that is because I'm going to try my hardest, and this is going to be really difficult, so bear with me on this, but I'm going to try my hardest to not use any verbal fillers. So that would be words like or you know, or things like that. Some people say different one, like you can already tell that I'm having trouble because I'm kind of making sure that I'm not saying them, and I think it's going to be a very hard habit to break. I think the result of it is that, like you just heard right there, is that there's going to be probably a lot more breaks in my speech, which I think is not really a bad thing. If you listen to many different speakers, you typically do hear them have little breaks in their speech. And speaking of a break, I'm going to have to, I think I might have just said there, but we're going to ignore that for now. I think I'm going to have to hop worlds and we'll find a good world. Wow, it really seems like every world is kind of full here. I'm just kind of hopping worlds. This is going to be like my 5th one, and yeah, it logs you out after a while. It's cool to see the game is pretty popular now, but it's going to, there we go, again, it's going to take a while to find a world, so one sec. Wow, so that was actually absurd. I think I spent about 5 minutes actually there trying to find a world, so this isn't probably the best space to kill blood velds, but we have found one. So I kind of lost my train of thought, but I will talk a little bit more about there we go again, trying to correct my speech. I generally think I'm pretty good at talking. Like, that's probably one of my strengths, I think, in this channel, is that I can talk about things for a long period of time and talk about them in depth. But to me, it's always been the glaring issue that I do kind of say words like and stuff like that when there really is no point. You can just kind of leave that space blank. It may seem a little different at first, and I'm open to feedback if you guys have any suggestions in terms of there we go. Maybe I just took this guy's spot, but it took me literally a million years to find it. So I don't know. If he really had made a little story about, hey, I was here already, maybe I would have hopped. But yeah, it'll probably take some adjustment time for me to get used to this. Like, I'm really struggling right now to not use any verbal fillers. And sorry if you can hear my chair, by the way. That's something I would like to have corrected. Sometimes you can hear my chair creaking. But there we go again. Anyway, it's going to take some time. I guess I'll stop pointing it out for now. But that's just kind of an adjustment thing that I'm going to at least try. And it's kind of funny because today I actually had to give a kind of presentation for one of my classes, and I'm a science major in college, an environmental science major, and one of our classes is on sustainability. So I gave a presentation about fracking, which, if you don't know, it's a form of energy, particularly in the United States. It's used in other places as well, where you can essentially blast water through drilled holes into the ground, and that releases natural gas, and it could be used for, you know, human use instead of things like oil or coal. And so I gave a presentation on that and kind of talking about the pros and cons of it, and I actually think I didn't use a single verbal filler for the whole time. I'm generally pretty confident in public speaking. For part of our curriculum, we had to take a required class on public speaking, and I did pretty well in it. I initially, as most people were kind of unsure about it at first. You know, it's a little bit odd talking in front of a big room of people about, you know, giving a presentation. Some people do it every single day, but I think a lot of people would consider that kind of scary when they're actually up there. But for a presentation like I had to give this morning, which was about 5 minutes, I just kind of practice it maybe like a million times. Just in my room, I would pretend I was giving the presentation, and I would do it kind of over and over, and just until I really had it down pat. So when it came to this morning, all there really was to it was to just go and do the exact same thing that I had done in practice, just in front of an audience of like 40 people or so. So it went pretty well, actually, and I was very happy with it. And I think my speech in it was pretty clear as well. So I guess that's enough for that topic. One thing I'd like to talk about in this video, as just kind of a basic topic, and something that's always been on my mind with Old School RuneScape, the game is actually doing pretty well right now. I looked on, there's this website, Crystal Math Labs. I'm not exactly sure why they picked such a weird name, but essentially it's a tracking website for RuneScape, Old School RuneScape in particular. You can generally look at different players and see their XP rates and things like that, such as like if you looked on mine, you'd be able to see that I've been getting a lot of range XP and Slayer XP. But one of the other things they have they can track is actually just the total players online at any like given month, and it's actually pretty interesting that Old School RuneScape obviously started out very popular because it was a big deal when it came back, and then it kind of slowly, like the graph, and you can see my mouse was kind of like, boom, Old School RuneScape comes out, it's very popular, then slowly decline, it's kind of stabilized off, and then it actually kind of came back, and it's been at a pretty decent level ever since, with a fair amount of people online at any given time. And you could kind of see that in the sense that it took me 5 minutes to find a world for Slayer and such. That does have an impact on how we play the game when there's more people playing it. It has an impact on the game's economy, on prices and things like that. Finding worlds is obviously a huge one. But one thing I'd like to talk about is a question actually, and the question is Old School RuneScape still old school? This is something I'm kind of torn on, and there's another question that goes hand to hand with that, is that should it still be old school? So what I mean is that a lot of things in the game are different now than when it came out. So as most people know about Old School RuneScape, when it came out it was just kind of a carbon copy of RuneScape, or almost a backup, I think you could say, of RuneScape as it was in 2007, kind of right before the God Wars Dungeon came out. And literally everything about it was the same. There were very few changes on release. I think one of the major changes was they actually made unidentified herbs to grimy, but people were upset about that, so they immediately changed it back. But over the years, a lot of things in the game have been changed and added to kind of not only make it like new RuneScape, but also add new content. But yeah, as I was saying, a lot of the content has actually been added from future years in RuneScape back to old school. So, for example, with the herbs, when the game came out, you couldn't know, when you got a herb, it was not a grimy Ranar, it would just say unidentified herb. And eventually they did change that to be grimy. And the main change is that you can see what herb it is even if you can't clean it or identify it. So a lot of other changes were made too for convenience, and I think these are the most popular ones. For example, we've had more bank space. We've had these bars here, which were never here originally. We had the XP counter. We had a lot of new areas, as you're seeing right here. This area never existed, as well as this weapon never existed. This thing didn't exist as well, I'm pretty sure. So really, when you look at it, this game has undergone so many changes that you could even argue that it's not really Old School RuneScape anymore. It's just kind of RuneScape in an alternate timeline almost. So just to go over some of the changes, these weren't here, so if you wanted to run, you had to go to your menu and toggle run, and I remember having to do this when Old School came back. And hopefully I can offer an interesting perspective on this, because I played RuneScape as early as like 2004, 2005, so I played through all that like very actively, and I'm playing through this era now, so I can kind of have two different perspectives. So like a few things was, yeah, you couldn't run here. Slayer was totally different. There was none of the smoking kills point system, as you could call it, in regular runes. Essentially in like 2010 or something like that, they added a quest called Smoking Kills, which isn't in Old School, but the rewards for it is that there's a Slayer point system and you can cancel tasks easier. Whereas when Old School came out, the only way to really cancel a task was to go to Berthorpe and get a really easy task and do that, and there was no point system. The system was just kind of overall more messy and really not as efficient to use. Kind of cool little safe spot I got here for at least now. So that was one thing. There was no Slayer helmet. One also big issue was the pathfinding system was very flawed. Like sometimes you would click to attack a monster and you would just kind of dance around him for like 10 seconds before you actually started attacking, especially with like larger monsters, because they have problems where it's like you can't really, it would be difficult to basically for the game to determine how to situate both of you. So let's say like a God Wars boss was right here and I clicked attacking him, he might start like running under me, or I would like dance around him. It would just take a long time for the pathfinding system to kind of work itself out. So they corrected that after a while. There was also other updates such as the clan chat update, where you automatically rejoin the last clan chat you were in. I'm actually very glad they did actually have a backup for RuneScape for where clan chats were, because in 2007 clan chats I think were pretty new, and it would have been kind of unfortunate if the backup didn't include clan chats, but that's one thing as well. Also, I think the major thing was the Grand Exchange was also not part. Two major things almost, actually. The Grand Exchange was not part of Old School RuneScape, and the God Wars Dungeon were not part of Old School RuneScape, and those have both since been added. And those have a major impact on the game. Like, some people didn't like the Grand Exchange because it kind of takes the interactive element of trading out of the game. So, for example, like, you no longer have to go and meet people and maybe make friends when you're going to trade stuff. You just kind of put something into a box and you get what you need. So that's kind of a huge change as well. And also, God Wars was not there. There was no God Swords. Just so many areas were not here back then, and it was just really a Old School RuneScape 3 years ago, and it's hard to believe this game is like 3 or 4 years old now. It was a very different game, and a lot of the changes arguably don't make it very old school anymore, but I would argue that it's probably for the better that all these changes exist. The game is a lot more convenient to play, while at the same time I don't think that it's necessarily that much easier to play. So I think that's, in my opinion, a really good balance of adding new stuff for convenience but not make it too easy, and the game also still has the old school feel of the graphics. The gameplay is relatively similar despite the new weapons and such, but it really kind of doesn't have that same old school feel with all the new stuff. But in the end, I probably think it's for the better that all these things are being added, and the community voting system is overall pretty good, I would say. There are some flaws with it. Some people might just kind of bandwagon on one side of a poll and not really look at the other side too much, or sometimes things need a lot of percentage. 75% is a very big threshold for something to pass, and the way that you suggest things that should be in polls is kind of not really situated yet. Like, people make Reddit posts and say, hey, JMod, can you look at this? Like, there probably should be a better submission system for actually submitting new ideas to the game. But overall, I think the game is heading in a good direction. There is a lot of new stuff being added all the time, and there's a little bit of a team working on it always. So that's kind of part of why I play Old School, and I do like the kind of just this format of the game better. But to be fair, I really haven't given RuneScape 3 much of a chance, but I'm not sure I even will anytime soon. It's just, the game just doesn't seem interesting to me, but it probably deserves a chance. So I guess that's really all I have to say for this video. Sorry if it was, there we go again. Sorry if I had a little bit of difficulty trying this new thing of not really using those verbal fillers. Who knows, maybe I'll just say fuck it in the next video, but let me know if you guys have any feedback on that or suggestions and such. And yeah, so this is fun. I'm actually been playing quite a lot recently. I had like 5,000 cannonballs a few days ago, and now I'm down to 1,000, so my Slayer has been continually improving. I don't really have a goal for Slayer. It's just kind of one of my favorite things to do in the game and make some money and such. Really, the main reason I think I'm doing Slayer right now is for ranged XP, or range. I guess it's technically ranged with a D, but a lot of people just call it range. I had like 700k to 94 range a few days ago, and now I have 230k. So with the Toxic Blowpipe, which I'm kind of using for the first time, and the Cannon for Slayer, I'm actually getting quite a lot of range XP, and I might not even need to use any Chinchampas. It's funny, I've actually gotten 99 range on 2 accounts already in regular RuneScape on both my main and my pure, so now I'm getting 99 range for the 3rd time, and maybe doing it a little bit differently this time without Chinchampas. So that's about it for this video, guys. If anyone has suggestions for more videos, I'd be happy to do them. This was kind of fun. A lot of people have always suggested doing a Slayer vlog again, so I figured I'd do that. Let me know what you guys think about, is Old School RuneScape still really old school? And if it's not, is it kind of for the better? I'm really interested to hear some people's opinions on that. And otherwise, guys, like this video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't already. Join my clan chat. I'm always in here when I'm online, which is Andrew, if I could leave it, Andrew AJT62. It's just the same as my YouTube channel. And also follow me on Twitch and Twitter for updates. Specifically Twitter, I've been pretty active on recently, so all that's in the description, as you guys know. And so yeah, that's about it for this video, guys. I'll see you in the next one, and thanks for watching. Have a good one.